Are you, like many others, trying to make sense of what's going on in the world? Thankfully, we can find some insight in the Bible. So come with us on a journey to unraveling Revelation.
Hi, welcome folks to Sydney, Australia. I'm going to share with you what I believe about the prophecies of the book of Revelation. I'll just launch straight off. I'll upload this onto YouTube and onto Facebook, and you can catch up with it. Now, this is going to be an in-depth study, so I'm going to move through it quite solidly. Here's the subject. Do the prophecies of the book of Revelation only describe events of the first century, or do they describe events of the end of time? Get ready for a shock. Okay? There are two kinds of prophecy in the Bible. There's classical prophecy, like Jeremiah. Then you've got what is called apocalyptic prophecy, like the books of Daniel and Revelation. They are very, very different. Classical prophecy, like that of Jeremiah or Amos, they will use mainly plain language and describe events that are taking place in their day to their audience. And it's usually Israel or Judah, or Israel and Judah in the Old Testament, God's people. And they'll talk about why they're in captivity and why they've got a mess and how they're going to come out of it, and sometimes even when they're going to come out of it. So classical prophecy talks about events like Jeremiah and Amos of their day, uses more plain language, and talks about the current situation. But prophecies like Daniel and Revelation, they're called apocalyptic. Apocalyptic comes from the Greek word apocalypsis, which means the unveiling, the revealing. Apocalyptic literature is usually very, very bizarre. Beasts and horns and dragons and all this weird symbolic language. And it does address situation of the Jews of God's day or Christians of God's day, but it goes beyond it. It goes from the local to the global. Classical prophecy will deal with events of the day, use plain language, and will deal just with local historical events. Apocalyptic prophecy, like Daniel and Revelation, talk about the current events, but uses them as a microcosm, as a symbol of things that are part of a bigger picture, a cosmic picture that includes the present, but goes right down to the end of time. So there's two kinds of biblical prophecy. There's classical prophecy and there is apocalyptic prophecy. What many Christians have done unwittingly is they've read the book of Revelation as if it's classical prophecy, as if the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation only speak to the current audience, only of the local earthly scene. But they do not. They include the local situation, but they will go into the cosmic scene and they'll take you right down to the end of time, and to be sure, including the local situation. Let me give an illustration. Let's compare Daniel with Jeremiah. Jeremiah speaks about God's people in captivity to Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon, and so does Daniel. But they write about it in very, very different ways. Jeremiah will talk about historical events, that they broke the covenant, that Babylon's going to come in, he's going to take them captive, and he did. So it uses more plain language to the current situation only and speaks about 70-year period, and it comes to the end. Daniel is not classical prophecy writing only about the current situation. Daniel will talk about the current situation. He'll also mention the 70 years in Daniel chapter 9, but then he'll say, hey, what's going on here with our captivity to Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, is only a microcosm of what's happening. There's something going on bigger than what's just happening here. It's global, it's cosmic, it transcends earthly kings to spirit princes, and we are part of a continuum of a battle between good and evil. That's, yes, we're in it right now, but it's going to go on into this empire and then the next empire and then the next empire. So it becomes global, cosmic, and it will take you right down to the end of time, and it will use bizarre language. The book of Revelation is just like that. And if you don't understand these two kinds of prophecy, you're going to miss the whole point and purpose of the book of Revelation. So Revelation is written to the seven churches of Asia Minor. about the local scenes, and then uses it as a springboard, as a microcosm of what's going to happen throughout time, right till the very end when everyone submits to Jesus. And that's definitely still future. Let me illustrate about apocalyptic prophecy from the book of Daniel, and then we'll just touch on it in the book of Revelation. Okay? I've just gone through a whole lot of pages here. Okay, let's take Daniel chapter 8 as an example that apocalyptic prophecy will deal with events of the current day, yeah? Meet their need and say, hey guys, we're part of something bigger than this. It's cosmic. It reaches right down to the very end of time, and it's heavenly and earthly battle. Now, Jeremiah doesn't do this. That's the difference between classical and apocalyptic. Let me give you an example of apocalyptic prophecy in Daniel. Daniel chapter 8 and verse 1. Look at the time reference. In the 3rd year of King Belshazzar's reign. King Belshazzar was a Babylonian king. So we're right back there in the 6th century BC. He's writing to God's people, dealing with events of their day. They were captive to the Babylonians, and Daniel gets a vision in the 6th century at that time to meet the needs of God's people at that time. But look what he does. He was, hey guys, what we're going through is bigger than you and me. There's something big going on here that's going to go on for the centuries. So it includes the local scene, transcends the local scene. Daniel 8:1. In the 3rd year of King Belshazzar's reign, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me earlier. That's in chapter 7. Okay, so at the time of the Babylonian Empire, Belshazzar is king. We're in the 6th century BC, and he's writing to his people in his day, but now he'll give them a prophecy that talks about their situation and then transcends it and says, guys, we're part of this bigger picture. Not just these local kings, but spirit princes in the heavenly realm. And this is going to go on for centuries and centuries and centuries, but God is in control, and it's all going to end up okay. That's Daniel and Revelation, not Jeremiah. That's the difference between apocalyptic prophecy and classical prophecy. So 8:1 gives us a time reference. 6th century BC, God's people in captivity. So he's saying, oh, it's only got to do with them. Not apocalyptic prophecy. Classical Jeremiah, classical prophecy, yes, but not apocalyptic prophecy. So he's writing to God's people in captivity in the 6th century BC, and he has a vision. He said, a vision appeared to me in 8:1 in the 6th century BC about God's people in captivity. And look what the vision is and its interpretation, okay? Daniel 8:17 to 22. Now, guys, I'm going quick here. Don't fret. This is live, but I will upload it onto Facebook. And I want you to circulate this around the world, yeah? This is going to have bearing upon when I get into the book of Revelation and expose Babylon and show that it's end time. But most people, a lot of people thinking, oh, Babylon was Jerusalem 1st century AD when Jerusalem was destroyed. That's misunderstanding the nature of apocalyptic. So I'm laying a foundation, okay? Apocalyptic prophecy talks to people in their current crisis and then transcends it globally and temporally, chronologically, historically, spatially, okay? So we've got a prophecy written in the 6th century BC, addressed to God's people in captivity, facing a crisis under Babylon in the 6th century BC, and he has a vision. And what's this vision? 8:17 to 22. It says this. So, 8:17, so he approached where I was standing. When he came near, I was terrified and fell face down. An angel comes to Daniel, is freaking out, and an angel appears, and he's going to give him the interpretation of this dream in the 6th century BC during a current crisis. They were in captivity in the 6th century BC to Babylon. But look what the angel tells them, what they're really going through. It's part of something bigger than just themselves. Yeah. Son of man, the angel said to me, understand that the vision refers to the time of the end. The Hebrew says extends to the time of the end. Extends to the time of the end. Starts, but extends to the time of the end. While he was speaking to me, I fell into a deep sleep with my face to the ground. Then he touched me and he made me stand up and he said, I'm here to tell you what will happen at the conclusion of the time of wrath. They were suffering the wrath under the Babylonians because it refers to appointed time of the end. It extends till the appointed time of the end in the Aramaic. The two-horned ram that you saw represents the kings of Media and Persia. Media and Persia, but he got this vision during the days of Babylon. That's what we just read. In the 3rd year, king of Belshazzar's reign. Belshazzar was a Babylonian king. He's now skipped to the next world empire. So it's transcending the local day in apocalyptic prophecy. The two-horned ram that you saw represents the kings of Media and Persia. The shaggy goat you saw represents the king of Greece, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece. The large horn between his eyes represents the first king, Alexander the Great of Greece. The four horns that took the place of the shattered horn represents the four kingdoms. After Alexander, it was divided up into four sections of the Grecian Empire. Guys, listen, it's very, very clear. Daniel's received a prophecy in the 6th century BC concerning the captivity of the Jews under Babylon, and now he's talking about empires from the 6th century BC, spanning right down to the time of Alexander the Great, which is down to the 2nd century BC. 400 years into the future. Please, prophecy can speak to the people of the current situation, but it doesn't just deal with the current situation. Let the Bible tell us what it means. Apocalyptic prophecy will deal with the current situation and then say this is a springboard, a microcosm of kingdom after kingdom after kingdom where God's people are going to suffer persecution. Guys, we're in a continuum of persecution. There's a battle going on. That's the nature of Daniel and Revelation. So even though Daniel was written to Jews in the 6th century BC, he spoke about events that go right down, not just past Greece, which is 300-400 years down the track. He will talk about a time where there's no more earthly kingdoms, and we'll get to that. And all human beings and all human kingdoms are gone, and all human beings now are in the kingdom of God only, and every single human being is worshipping God. All of them. Yep, I just put in my universalist thrust in there. But let me show you this in more detail. Come to Daniel chapter 7, another prophecy written to God's people in captivity in Babylon. And he will go and he'll say, guys, what we're going through under Babylon, it's going to keep going. Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. Rome's going to divide into 10 parts. And then one day a rock's going to come. Jesus is going to come. He's going to destroy all these earthly kingdoms. And then all the people of the world are going to be in union worshipping God. Yeah? So he's saying we're part of a continuum of large cosmic events. That's the nature of Daniel and Revelation. It speaks to people of that scene, but transcends it. That's the nature of apocalyptic. Listen to Daniel 7, 1-3. I'm motoring through quickly. You'll have time to watch this again at your leisure and take notes. Okay? Daniel 7, 1-3 says this. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon. There you go. First year, Belshazzar, king of Babylon. We're in the 6th century BC. He's writing to God's people. They were suffering under the Babylonians. And look what he says. We are part of a continuum, a great conflict that's going to span kingdom after kingdom after kingdom. It was written to them, but not just about them. And that's how the book of Revelation is written as well. And we'll get to that. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream with visions in his mind as he was lying in his bed. He wrote down the dream, and here is the summary of his account. Daniel said, in my night vision at night, I was watching as suddenly the four winds of heaven stirred up the great sea. Suddenly 4 huge beasts came up from the sea, one after the other, each different from one another. Apocalyptic literature. 4 succeeding beasts, one after the other, after the other, after the other, yeah? And he's writing during the time of Babylon. What do these beasts represent? He starts off speaking to the people of God. During the time of Babylon, they were facing a crisis, and then he has a vision of 4 succeeding beasts coming up in succession, after the other, after the other, after the other. Verse 15-22, you have the interpretation. As for me, Daniel, my spirit was deeply distressed. As for me, Daniel, my spirit was deeply distressed within me, and the visions in my mind terrified me. So these 4 beasts coming up. I approached one of those who were standing by me, and I asked him the true meaning of these visions. So he let me know how the interpretation of these things were. These huge beasts, 4 in number, are 4 kingdoms who will rise from the earth. In chapter 8, he mentions some of them. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece. Yeah? And the one after that was Rome, of course. So it says these 4 beasts are 4 kingdoms. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. And they were mentioned by name in chapter 8 as succeeding beasts, fighting with one another, overtaking one another. And Daniel chapter 10, which we'll get to, he'll say, and these beasts, powers on earth. Well, they've got spirit princes above them. That's the nature, purpose, and scope of biblical apocalyptic prophecy, and it's very different to Daniel and to Jeremiah and Amos. They apocalyptic prophets, Daniel and Revelation, Daniel and John, will talk about the immediate scene as a microcosm. Say, guys, we're part of something big here. This conflict is huge, and it's going to go on and on and on and on. But God wins, and he'll win all people, and he'll dissolve all human kingdoms. This ain't happened yet. Okay? And verse 17, these huge beasts, 4 in number, are 4 kingdoms who will rise from the earth. But the holy ones of the Most High will receive the kingdom and possess it forever. Yes, forever and ever. See what you're saying? We're in captivity, and it's going to go for a long time. This battle is going to go through succeeding empires over centuries. They were mentioned by name. Babylon was mentioned 6th century BC, and then he mentions Alexander the Great, the first king of the Grecian Empire. And he mentioned Greece by name in chapter 8, 300-400 years down the track. But guys, hang in there. Even though these earthly empires are going to persecute us, we're going to win. And it said, but the holy ones of the Most High, God's people who have been persecuted during these kingdoms, they will receive the kingdom. But not during the time of these earthly empires. Won't happen for centuries. And they will possess it forever and ever. You see how he takes the immediate context, he extends it out through the centuries, and he makes it cosmic in scope. Yeah? And he says, you're on the winning side. Hang in. Hang in there. Verse 19 of Daniel 7. Then I wanted to know the true meaning of the 4th beast. The 4th kingdom really worried him. The one that was different from the others. It was extremely terrifying, with iron teeth and bronze claws, devouring, crushing, and trampling with its feet whatever was left. Apocalyptic literature, bizarre symbolism, right? Very different to Jeremiah. I also wanted to know about the 10 horns on the beast, and about the other horn that came up after the 10 horns on his head. And he knocked down 3 of them. And this horn, this little horn after the 10 horns coming from the 4th beast, which is the 4th kingdom, it had eyes like of a man, and it spoke arrogantly. And it was more visible than the others. This little horn worried him. It's Antichrist. As I was watching this little horn, he waged war against the holy ones and was prevailing against them. You see? The Jews in the 6th century were experiencing warfare. They were being prevailed upon by Babylon. And what does apocalyptic literature do? It says, guys, we're part of a continuum. We're part of something bigger than just ourselves. It's going to go through kingdom to kingdom to kingdom. But the holy ones of God, they're going to win through this. They're going to possess the kingdom. But it will be at the time of this 4th one, this terrible 4th beast that has 10 horns, which are 10 kings. And then a little horn comes up. And it says... verse 21, as I was watching, this horn waged war against the holy ones. Way past Rome. It was waging war against. Hey guys, we're getting waged war against. It's going to keep going. Right down to the end. And then finally God will intervene. And there'll be no more kingdoms. And we will reign and rule forever and ever. And it says, as I was watching, this horn waged war against the holy ones and was prevailing against them until the Ancient of Days arrived. This is after the 4 world empires. After it, the 4th one, Rome, divides into 10, and then the little horn, the Antichrist, rises up, and this keeps going on. They'll wage war against us until the Ancient of Days comes. Jesus comes. And judgment was given, the final judgment. Takes you right to the final judgment. Was given in favour of the holy ones of the Most High. For the time had come, and the holy ones took possession of the kingdom. That's the nature of apocalyptic prophecy. See what I'm saying? Speaks to the local scene and says, guys, we're part of something much bigger than this. We are part of something much bigger than this. This is going to go on for centuries, and this battle between God's people and earthly kings is going to go on for centuries, centuries and centuries, kingdom after kingdom after kingdom, until judgment comes. When the Ancient of Days comes, bang! And the judgment's made afraid of their saints. All these kingdoms are gone, and God's people rule forever and ever. Yeah? That's what apocalyptic prophecy is like. So it's not correct to say that the book of Revelation was written only to people of the 1st century. The book of Revelation, the apocalypse, is apocalyptic literature. And by nature, it spans centuries. That's how it's different to classical prophecy. I'm going to keep going, okay? Watch this at your own leisure. This is going to be fairly lengthy, but it's going to be thorough because I'm laying a foundation on how I interpret the book of Revelation because I believe parts of it deal with our day. Okay? And we're going to get to that. But let me lay this foundation first. In Daniel chapter 10, Daniel has another vision. Okay? There's another vision about a great war. And it worries him because he knows it concerns him and it concerns God's people. Daniel 10, verse 1. Ooh, I dropped it. Daniel 10, verse 1. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia. Aha! We've jumped out of Babylon. Some time has elapsed. We're now Persia. Yeah, we're now in the next world empire, Persia, after Babylon. So we're now in the 5th century BC. And Daniel has another vision about more captivity, more warfare between God's people and the nations. In the 3rd year, 10:1 of Cyrus, king of Persia, a message was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belteshazzar. The message was true and was about a great conflict. Here we go again. Now we're in the next world empire and the conflict continues on. God's people stuck in warfare against, again, in the next world empire under the next kingdom, the Medo-Persian, the Persian Empire. The message was true and was about a great conflict. He understood the message and had understanding of the vision. So, an angel now appears. Daniel knows, oh, more trouble. We're in the next world empire and there's more trouble. I get it. And it worried him. And Daniel 10, 12 to 20, an angel comes down. And again he says, this conflict you saw, Daniel, is going to go on for centuries. What's happening with your people now under captivity to the Persians is going to continue on until the prince of princes turns up and it all ends. Yeah? Daniel 10, 12 to 20. Listen. Then he said, don't be afraid, Daniel, since the first day you began to pray for understanding and to humble yourself before God. Your request has been heard in heaven, and I've come in answer to your prayer. But for 21 days, the spirit prince of the kingdom of Persia blocked my way. What? This is what apocalyptic prophecy does. It's apocalyptic. And apocalypse means apocalypsis. Away from the calypsis, the veil. Removing the veil. Daniel, what's going here on earth, there's a heavenly counterpart. This battle you're going through represents a microcosm of the battle going on in the heavenly realm. There's something bigger going on than you guys just being captive now to the Persians. There's a battle in the heavenly realm that's reflecting and mirroring the battle on the earthly realm. And this goes on for succeeding empires for centuries until the judgment. You see what I'm getting at here, yeah? It says, Daniel, for 21 days, the spirit prince of the kingdom of Persia blocked my way. Then Michael, one of the archangels, came to help me, and I left him there with the spirit prince of the kingdom of Persia. Michael, the archangel, the chief spirit prince, has got to join this angel, who I think was Gabriel, and the two of them had to take on this other baddie. Cosmic warfare. Jeremiah didn't see this. Daniel saw this. This is the difference between classical prophecy and apocalyptic prophecy. And he says, Daniel, you guys are in captivity. Me and Michael are here to try to get rid of this other evil spirit prince that's ruling over Persia because God wants to set you free. He was blocked. He was blocked. Verse 14. Now, I am here to explain what will happen to your people in the future. How far in the future? Well, it started off in Babylon. Now we're in Persia. How far in the future? I'm here to explain what will happen to your people, for this vision concerns and reaches a time yet to come. Starts now and reaches to a time yet to come, not just to your time. Verse 15, while he was speaking to me, I looked down at the ground, unable to say a word. Then one who looked like a man touched my lips, and he opened my mouth, and I began to speak. And I said to the one standing in front of me, the angel, I'm filled with anguish because of the vision. It's not going to stop. Now you're telling me there's evil principalities involved? Daniel's now in anguish. When is this going to end? Now you're telling me it's going to go down into the future? That's what is going on here. I said to the one standing in front of me, I am filled with anguish because of the vision I have seen, my Lord. I'm very weak. How can someone like me, your servant, talk to you, my Lord? My strength is gone. I can hardly breathe. Then the one who looked like a man touched me again, and I felt my strength returning. Don't be afraid, he said, for you're very precious to God. Peace, be encouraged, be strong. And as he spoke these words to me, I suddenly felt stronger and said to him, please speak to me, my Lord, for you have strengthened me. Tell me about this battle that's going to go on to the future concerning God's people that's involved with principalities in the spirit realm. And the angel replied, do you know why I've come? Do you know why I have come? Soon I must return to fight again against the spirit prince of the kingdom of Persia, and after that, the spirit prince of the kingdom of Greece will come. This battle goes on. Babylon to Greece with Alexander the Great and Antiochus Epiphanes, 3 to 4 centuries. Apocalyptic prophecy includes the current scene and then puts you in a bigger picture. And Revelation does the exact same thing. Yeah? Let's go down to the book of Revelation. John is talking to the 7 churches in Asia Minor. Okay? And you'll talk to them and you'll say, guys, what I'm saying here applies to you, but not only to you. What I'm saying applies to you and events after this, where we end up with a final global warfare between evil and God's people. He's going to do the same thing as Daniel. And we've got explicit statements in John that say this, by John that say this. In Revelation 2:10, look what he says. Don't be afraid of what you're about to suffer. He's talking to the 7 churches, yeah? Don't be afraid about what you are about to suffer, okay? The devil will throw some of you into prison to test you. He's talking to the 1st century church, yes. You will suffer for 10 days, but if you remain faithful, even when facing death, I will give you the crown of life. So the church was suffering intense persecution. The devil was hammering them. So he speaks to them and he says, what I'm telling you applies to your day. And then in chapter 3 and verse 10, he will say, I'm talking to you not about events that will happen now, but also reaching down to the end of time, way past your time. And what's happening to you is a microcosm of what's going to happen to all Christians throughout time, and especially focusing on Christians at the very end of time when you've got the judgment. Okay? So in chapter 2, verse 10, he speaks to Christians of his day, and he tells them, you're going through persecution. And then in 3:10, he says this, and there will be a great time of testing. You're going through a test, but there will be future a great time of testing. More than what you are just going through. It's transcending your day. 3:10, there will be a great time of testing that will come upon the whole world to test all those who dwell on the world. Well, there you go. John has made a statement to the 7 churches saying, guys, what you're going through, it's going to happen globally, just like the book of Daniel. You see that? So apocalyptic literature does relate to people of their day and say, guys, you're part of a continuum. And this testing, present continuous tense, continues on until it becomes global. There will be a great time of testing that will come upon the whole world. So what's happening to you is going to come upon the whole world to test those who belong to this world. There you go. So it's not just written to the 7 churches in Asia Minor. It's written to them, to be sure, but it transcends them. Yeah? From the present to the local to the future when it's global. From the present, which is local, is a springboard, a microcosm, to the future that is going to become global. The test then, test now, testing in between. That's the nature of biblical apocalyptic. It was written to the 1st century church, but wasn't just about the 1st century church. So, do I believe the book of Revelation applies to the 1st century? Yep. But it's more than that. And John made it very, very clear. I'm writing events that are now and events that will be global. And this is in Revelation 3, which is not the symbolic part. This is the epistolary part, the letter part, yeah, the literal part. So it goes from the local. He said, guys, you're in a continuum of warfare with the devil. The devil's going to throw you into prison, and he's going to test you. And what you're going through is the testing, present continuous, is going to continue on until it becomes global. And as you read through the book of Revelation, the global test is the mark of the beast. And culminates with the 7 plagues, which we'll get to in a minute, and it has a happy ending, just like book of Daniel. Revelation 1:19, John will give us a chronological statement that he says, my book's divided into 2 sections. Events that are taking place now in the 7 churches in Asia Minor, and events that will take place after the time of the 7 churches in Asia Minor, which extend until the final judgment, the return of Jesus, and all the nations finally are surrendering to Jesus. Okay, I'm going to give you my universalist ending of this book. So I think I'm being joined by my daughter. Sienna, I'm doing live telecast. You need to leave me alone. You can say hello. All right, go back inside. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, sweetheart. All right, I'm at the front door. Okay, so let's have a look how John divides up his book into 2 sections. Things concerning the present, the 7 churches, and things that then commence after the 7 churches and extend right down to the end, when all those opposed to God repent and submit. Okay? You like this? Revelation 1:19. John gives us a time frame for his book. Yeah? Time frame lenses. Revelation 1:19. John, write these things which you have seen. Write these things which you have seen. What things? What time frame? And the things which are present, and the things that which will take place after this. Stop. You need to stop right here. He's telling you the time reference of the prophecies of his book. John, write down the things that you've seen. And they fit into 2 chronological categories. Write down the things which you have seen, the things which are, and the things which will take place after this. That's 1:19. So we've got 2 divisions to the book. Things which are currently taking place, and things which will take place after the things that are currently taking place. Significantly, after Revelation 1:19, he will now go into describe things which are taking place. And what do you have in chapter 2 and 3? The message to the 7 churches of the first century. Wow. That's a chronological springboard statement. John, write down the things which are currently take place. We go into chapters 2 and 3, yeah? And he goes through the events of the 7 churches. And even in the events of the 7 churches, he's saying what's happening to you now is going to continue on globally, right throughout time, globally, until the consummation, yeah? So write down things which currently are, and then things that will take place, future tense, after this. Then we go immediately into the 7 churches, things which are, Revelation 2 and 3. And then when he finishes the messages to the 7 churches, he's going to get to events that are after this. Write down things which are and things which will take place after this. After this. Note that phrase. We jump down to Revelation 4:1. We just finished the messages to the 7 churches, things which are. And look at the significant change in chapter 4 after he finishes the messages to the 7 churches. 4:1. After these things. He's just spoken about the things that are, the 7 churches. And now it says, after these things, the messages to the 7 churches, the things which are. After these things, I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven. From the earthly to the heavenly. Apocalyptic literature is cosmic. Yeah? After these things, the things which are, the letters to the 7 churches, I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven. And he's going to see the Spirit realm, like Daniel did in chapter 10. And the first voice which I heard was like a trumpet speaking to me. Now it gets all weird. Get all the symbolic language, yeah? The first voice which I heard was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, come up here, and now I will show you things which will take place after this. Listen to 119 again. Write the things which you have seen, the things which are, and things which will take place after this. 7 churches, chapters 2 and 3. Then chapter 4, we've done the things which are. Now he's going to show us things that will take place after the 7 churches. After these things, the things which are, the 7 churches, I looked and behold a door standing open in heaven, and the first voice which I heard was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, Come up here, and I will now show you things which will take place after this. We've done the things which are, the first century. Now I'm going to show you events that will take place after this. Exact same Greek terminology, it's clear. It deals with events of the first century and after. And then he will go through the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, and he'll go through the 7 plagues. And they will go through epochs of history, first this, then this, then this, then this. And the 7th one in each of those 3 series always ends with the return of Jesus and the judgment, where the nations finally, after the second coming, they do repent. You see? I said, guys, hang in there. What you guys are going through in the first century is going to happen in all centuries. In succeeding events after these things, events are going to take place. Guys, we're in a continuum of suffering. That's the nature of apocalyptic literature. Let's go to the last cycle of 7, the 7 last plagues. And we're going to finish now. And we're going to have a look how the last series of 7. If you look at the 7th seal, the 7th trumpet, and the 7th plague, they're all the end of the world. That takes place after the first century. After the events of the 7 churches are finished, a series of 7 epochs. Bang, 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 bang. Mentioning kingdoms and eras, ending up with the kingdom of God, just like he did in Daniel. And now all evil is finished. The persecution ends. God's people are worshipping before the throne. And then they talk about the massive big twist that happens right at the very end. Yeah? Let's have a look at Revelation 15. We're going to finish here. We're going to look at past the final test. They said a final test is going to come to test all those who dwell on the earth. That's the mark of the beast in Revelation 13. Yeah? And then you have the 7 last plagues that follow the mark of the beast. And we come to the end. The very, very, very end. Revelation 15, 1 to 4. Remember, 2 sections. Write down events that are, and then write down events after these things that will take place. That's going to end up in a global thing. We're in a continuum. Yeah? Revelation 15, 1 to 4, we're looking at the 7 last plagues and how it all ends. Yeah? Way past the time of the first century. Spoken to the first century, but not just about the first century. That's the nature of biblical apocalyptic. Revelation 15, 1 to 4. Then I saw another sign in heaven. Great and marvellous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them the wrath of God is complete. Clear. With the time of the 7 last plagues. Okay? They're all poured out on those who have rejected Jesus, rejected the gospel, and persecuted God's people. But God ain't finished with them yet. Yeah? So it says, for in them, the 7 last plagues, the wrath of God is complete. And I saw something during the 7 last plagues, yeah? And I saw something like a sea of glass mingled with fire. And those who had the victory over the beast. Stop. The global crisis of Revelation 13, the test, has come, it's gone, it's over. Yeah? Events that will take place after this. They go through right to the series of the 7th seal, the 7th trumpet, the 7 plagues. Now we're at the time of the 7th plague. Yeah? And we've got now, after the mark of the beast, after the great final global crisis, that was way past the first century. The things which are and things which will take place after this, when the whole world will be tested. 3:10, that's chapter 13, yeah? And now after, at the time of the 7th plague, and the mark of the beast, the final test is over. That was predicted in chapter 3, verse 10, yeah? And now he says, and look how wonderfully it ends. We reach right down to the eschaton, right down to the very, very end, after the final judgments of God. Verse 2, and I saw something like a sea of glass mingled with fire, and those who had the victory over the beast, over his image, over the mark, and over the number of his name, standing on a sea of glass, having harps of God. And they sing the song of Moses, the song of God, and the song of the Lamb. They're before God. It's all over. The final global crisis is over. There's 7 plagues now. We're in the time of the 7th plague. We're right down the end of the judgments of God. And they sing a song. Hey, we're up here before God. We're singing. We're worshipping God. But listen to the content. To the lyrics of this song. After the final global crisis. Great and marvelous are your works, Lord God Almighty. What? They're in heaven. The people are going through the 7 last plagues. Just and true are your ways, O King of the nations. Who will not fear you, O Lord, and glorify your name? For you alone are holy, for all nations will come and worship before you. They're not there yet. They're in the lake of fire. They're in the time of the 7 last plagues. In fact, the very last one. They're in the lake of fire and they're saying, God, you're marvelous. Even those who rejected you and persecuted us, they're going to join us. For all nations will come. They're not there yet. All nations will come and they will worship before you. They're going to join in. Why? For your judgments have been manifested. The judgments are the 7 last plagues. As a result of the 7 last plagues, all the nations are going to join us in this heavenly worship scene. Wow. This brings tears to my eyes, folks. We know how it's going to end. Yeah? So, the book of Revelation, like the book of Daniel, was written to the original audience, but transcended them. Apocalyptic prophecy is different to classical prophecy, like Jeremiah. Jeremiah will talk about his day, usually use plain language, and it ends there. Apocalyptic prophecy will talk about their day, and so this is the springboard for something that's much bigger here on earth and in the heavenly realm. There's something cosmic, but God's in control. History's got a goal. Everyone, even those who reject Jesus and getting the 7 last plagues, experiencing the judgments of God, are going to join in and worship God. Okay? That's my basic take on prophecy. I think it's pretty biblical. I include preterism. It was in the 1st century. I agree with futurism. It's going to be the last century, but it's going to be all the centuries in between. The book of Revelation talks to all people of all time, and it's got a massive, fantastic ending with even the rebellious come and they worship God too. Yeah? So that's my take on prophecy. I hope it has blessed you. I've laid a foundation. So when I get into this stuff about the beast and the mark of the beast in Babylon at the end of time, just before the judgment, you can see that this book covers the 1st century right down to the end. So I think I'm on solid ground to indicate that these events, that just before the judgment, when the New Jerusalem appears, are just before the end of time, which I think may be knocking on our doors. But I won't put my head on a chopping block. I love you, folks. Bless you all. Okay, I will upload this now to Facebook and then just see if my assistant and good buddy in England can put this onto YouTube. Yeah, circulate it, read it in conjunction with the previous 2 videos that I've just done on Babylon. And we'll continue on with Babylon in a couple of days' time. Bless you. I love you all. Bye-bye.